The bride's laughter filled the small room as guests sang outside. Beads clinked in the hairdresser's calabash bowl while Adetutu, the village's most skilled braider, worked her hands quickly through the bride's thick, black hair. Everything looked perfect, until she leaned slightly to adjust a bead and glanced at the tall oval mirror before them. Her breath froze. The face staring back at her was not the bride's at all. The woman in the reflection had the same wedding attire, the same white coral beads, but her skin was ash-gray, her lips twisted in a wicked smile, and her eyes glowed with a deep, unnatural red. The mouth in the mirror moved, though the real bride sat still, smiling sweetly. "You cannot stop what is coming, little girl," the mirror face whispered without sound, yet Adetu heard it loud inside her head. Her hands trembled. The wooden comb fell to the floor. Outside, the drumming and singing grew louder, but in that moment, the world inside the small room felt silent and cold. Before she could speak, the mirror face's eyes shifted and locked directly on hers. The morning sun had spilled golden light over Orogun village, a place where everyone knew one another's name and strangers were welcomed with cola nuts and smiles. It was the kind of place where children played under the mango trees until dusk, elders sat in circles telling old tales, and neighbors never needed to knock before entering each other's homes. Adetutu, only 20 years old, was well known for one thing: her gifted hands. She could braid hair so neatly and beautifully that even women from neighboring towns came to seek her service. Her mother had taught her the craft, but Adetutu's skill was something else entirely. She could braid patterns so intricate they looked like woven cloth. On this particular morning, the whole village buzzed with excitement. Today was the wedding of Aidbimp, the only daughter of the wealthy palm oil merchant, Baba Salako. The merchant had spared no cost. Drummers had been paid since dawn, the smell of steaming jollof rice floated in the air, and colorful fabrics hung like flags on every corner. Adetutu had been chosen to braid the bride's hair, a huge honor, not just because of the prestige but also because Baba Salako was known to be generous. A job like this could mean money enough to fix the leaking roof of her mother's hut before the rains came. She woke early, bathed in the river, and put on her cleanest iro and buba. As she walked to Baba Salako's compound, villagers called out greetings and teased her. "Adetutu, don't make the bride so beautiful that she forgets the groom," one old man chuckled. Her best friend, Funk, who sold plantains at the market, waved and whispered, "When you're done, remember to tell me all the details of the ceremony." Adetutu laughed, feeling light-hearted. She loved her work, but she also felt a small knot of nervousness in her stomach. Weddings always had an air of pressure, and she wanted everything to go perfectly. By the time she entered the bride's room, Aidbimp was seated on a low stool, wrapped in a white lace iro, her face glowing with happiness. The room smelled of camphor and fresh palm oil soap. "Ekaro, Auntie Adetutu," the bride greeted warmly, even though she was older by a few years. "Ekaro Iowo," Adetutu replied with a smile. "Are you ready to be the most beautiful bride Orogun has ever seen?" The bride laughed shyly, and they began. Adetutu's fingers moved like magic, parting, twisting, and braiding. The women around them gossiped softly about the number of cows Baba Salako had slaughtered, the guests who had traveled from far away, and the size of the groom's family compound. The calm rhythm of braiding eased Adetutu's nerves, until a small, strange moment caught her attention. As she adjusted a beaded strand, she thought she saw the bride blink. But the blink felt slow, deliberate, different. And for just a breath of a second, the air in the room seemed to cool. She brushed it off, thinking it was her imagination. Still, that tiny knot of unease in her stomach grew slightly tighter. She worked on, adding the coral beads Baba Salako had imported from Benin. Her movements were steady, but her eyes began to stray to the tall mirror in front of them. She had always found it odd. This mirror had been in the bride's family for generations, framed with carved figures that looked half human, half animal. It was said to be lucky. Lucky or not, Adetutu couldn't shake the feeling that the carved eyes seemed to watch her. Just then, a woman came in to deliver a tray of steaming pepper soup for the bride. She set it down, greeted everyone, and left. The scent filled the air, rich and warm. The low hum of conversation and the rhythm of her hands almost lulled Adetutu into forgetting her unease. Almost. Because the next time she glanced at the mirror, she thought she saw the bride's lips move without sound, though the real bride's mouth had not moved at all. Adetutu blinked quickly and looked again. And this time, she saw something that made her fingers freeze mid-braid. It was just the beginning. The bead in Adetutu's hand slipped and clattered to the floor. She bent to pick it up, hoping the quick movement would steady her racing heart. When she sat upright again, she dared to glance back at the mirror, only to see the bride's normal, smiling face staring back. She swallowed hard. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the morning sun had dazzled her eyes. She told herself it was nothing and kept braiding. Outside, the drummers beat a faster rhythm. Women's voices rose in chorus, praising the groom's family. Laughter and chatter filled the air. Inside the small room, the bride hummed softly, looking every bit like a woman ready to start her new life. Yet Adetutu's mind was restless. "Your hands are shaking," the bride teased gently. "Am I making you nervous?" Adetutu forced a smile. "No, Iowo. Just, you're too beautiful. I don't want to make any mistake." They both laughed, but it was a thin laughter like paper in the wind. Halfway through the final braid, the air in the room suddenly changed. It was subtle, but Adetutu felt it. The scent of pepper soup vanished, replaced by a faint smell like wet earth after a storm. A small chill swept across her bare arms. One of the bride's aunties, who had been fanning herself in the corner, frowned. "Did anyone leave the door open? This breeze is strange." No one answered. Adetutu's eyes flicked to the mirror again, and her breath caught. This time the change was clearer. The bride's reflection was smiling, but it wasn't a warm, happy smile. It was sharp, cruel, almost mocking. The eyes were no longer brown but a deep, glowing red, like embers in the dark. The skin in the reflection looked gray, cracked like old clay. And then the mouth in the reflection moved again. "You cannot stop what is coming." The words weren't spoken aloud, but Adetutu heard them inside her mind, as if they had been whispered right into her ear. She gasped and stepped back so quickly that the beaded strand slipped from her hands. "What is it?" the bride asked, turning slightly. Adetutu's lips parted, but she didn't know what to say. How could she tell a bride on her wedding morning that her reflection looked like something out of a midnight ghost tale? She bent down to retrieve the fallen beads, hoping to hide her shaking. But the moment her eyes rose again, she saw something in the mirror that froze her where she stood. This time, the reflection was no longer of the bride. It was of her. Her own face, but not as it should be. Her skin was pale, her lips bloodless, her hair wild and matted, her eyes the same glowing red as before. The reflection grinned slowly, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. Adetutu's knees weakened. The aunties in the room kept chatting, oblivious. The bride tilted her head, waiting for Adetutu to continue braiding. But Adetutu couldn't move. She could only stare at the thing in the mirror. The thing that looked exactly like her. Adetutu's heartbeat pounded so loudly she was sure someone else in the room could hear it. She wanted to scream, to shout for help, but her voice felt trapped in her throat. The reflection in the mirror tilted its head at the same time she did, mimicking her like a shadow, but its eyes gleamed with something alive and dangerous. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the strange face in the mirror blinked, once, twice, and was gone. It was her own familiar face again. Dark eyes, calm expression, scarf tied neatly. She blinked rapidly. Was she going mad? Adetutu. The bride's voice was gentle but curious. "Are you all right? You're sweating." Adetutu forced her lips into a small smile. "I'm fine, Iowo. Just the heat." One of the aunties chuckled from the corner. "Ah, she's just nervous. Baba Sulako's daughter is no ordinary customer, oh." The laughter in the room eased the tension a little, but Adetutu's hands were still trembling. She tried to braid faster, determined to finish and leave. She told herself again that she was imagining things. After all, mirrors could play tricks, especially with strange light. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just a trick of the eyes. Something about the mirror was wrong. Very wrong. She was halfway done with the final braid when the singing outside stopped suddenly. It was as if the whole compound had gone quiet at once. The silence was heavy, pressing in from all sides. The bride's smile faded. "What's happening outside?" Before anyone could answer, a deep, slow knock sounded on the door. Not the hurried knock of a friend or relative, but a measured thud. Thud. Thud like a drumbeat. The eldest auntie frowned. "Who knocks like that on a wedding day?" Adetutu's stomach churned. The knocking stopped. And then, without the door opening, a cold wind swept into the room. The mirror fogged over, as if someone had breathed on it. When the fog cleared, the bride's reflection was back to that ash-gray, red-eyed face. But this time it was pointing, straight at Adetutu. No one else seemed to notice. The voice came again inside her head, stronger now. "You must leave before the sun sets, or you will take her place." Her mouth went dry. "Take her place?" she whispered before she could stop herself. "What did you say?" the bride asked. Adetutu shook her head quickly. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." The knocking resumed, louder this time. Thud-thud-thud. The eldest auntie moved to open the door. But when she did, the doorway was empty. No person, no shadow, not even a footprint on the red earth. The auntie muttered under her breath and shut the door, but the cold air lingered. Adetutu's heart raced. She had braided hair for many brides, but she had never experienced anything like this. She knew one thing for certain now. This wasn't just a strange wedding day. Something dangerous had entered this room, and it was connected to that mirror. Still, she couldn't just run. It would shame her family, and worse, it would shame the bride on her special day. But the words from the mirror wouldn't leave her mind. "Before the sun sets, or you will take her place." She didn't know what it meant yet, but she had to find out. That was when she made her decision. She would finish the hair. But after that, she was going to uncover the truth about that mirror, no matter what it took. By the time Adetutu tied the final bead and smoothed the bride's hair into place, her mind was no longer on the braids. Every movement of her fingers had been automatic. Her thoughts were busy circling the strange warning from the mirror. The aunties clapped and praised her skill. "Ah, our Iowa is shining like the morning sun," one of them sang. The bride looked in the mirror, but Adetutu noticed something strange. This time the reflection smiled normally, as if nothing had happened. Adetutu wiped her damp palms on her wrapper. She needed to talk to someone. But who? If she told the bride's family, they might laugh at her. Or worse, accuse her of bringing bad luck to the wedding. When the bride was whisked away to change into her reception outfit, Adetutu quietly slipped out of the room and into the compound. The noise of drums, talking, and laughter hit her like a wave. It almost made her forget the icy fear in her chest. Almost. She spotted Mama Ife, an old woman who sold herbs and charms by the market gate. Mama Ife was known for two things. She could cure a stubborn cough with a single brew, and she had eyes that seemed to see more than the ordinary. If anyone in the village could make sense of this, it was her. Adetutu hurried across the yard and found the old woman sitting alone under a mango tree, sipping from a calabash. "Mama Ife cousin," she greeted breathlessly. The old woman squinted at her. "Adetutu, why are you running like a goat chased by rain?" "Mama, I need to ask you something about a mirror." At that, Mama Ife's expression changed. She set down her calabash slowly. "What mirror?" Adetutu explained in a low voice. How the reflection had changed, how it had spoken to her, how it warned her about taking someone's place. She didn't leave out a single detail. Mama Ife's eyes stayed on her the whole time, unblinking. When Adetutu finished, the old woman leaned forward. "Child, that mirror you speak of, was it carved with half-human, half-animal figures?" Adetutu's skin prickled. "Yes." "How do you know?" Mama Ife's voice dropped to a whisper. "That mirror is older than your grandmother's grandmother. It was made in a time when men and spirits still traded freely. They say it can hold the soul of a person. Or trade it for another. Adituda's mouth went dry. Trade it? The old woman nodded. If the mirror chooses you, it can pull you in and put another spirit in your place. Sometimes it happens at weddings, sometimes at births. That is why such objects should be buried, not displayed. Adetutu shivered. Mama, what do I do? Mama Ife looked toward the big house where the bride was being dressed. If the mirror has shown you your own face with its eyes, it means it is thinking about you. You must be careful. Do not let the bride stand before it again until the day is done. That will be hard, Adetutu said quietly. It's her family's lucky mirror. Mama Ife's gaze was sharp. Then you must find a way to guard it or destroy it. Because if the sun sets while that mirror still has its eyes on you, you will not see another sunrise. Before Adetutu could ask more, a loud ululation came from the house. The bride was ready. People surged toward the hall to escort her out. Adetutu's moment was gone. But as she turned to rejoin the wedding, she glanced at the house one more time and froze. Through the open window of the bride's room, she saw the mirror, and in its surface, the red-eyed reflection was still there, staring straight at her, smiling slowly as if it knew every step she would take next. The ululations and drumming drowned out the pounding in Adetutu's chest, but they couldn't drown out the sight of that reflection still grinning at her from the bride's window. She forced herself to move with the crowd into the open courtyard, where guests gathered to watch the bride's grand entrance. The air smelled of roasted goat meat, fresh palm wine, and hot puff-puff. Children darted between the legs of adults, laughing. Bright fabrics flashed in the sun as women danced. The groom stood proudly by the palm leaf archway, flanked by his friends in crisp white agbatas. The bride appeared, radiant, and a cheer erupted. She stepped forward gracefully, her coral beads clinking with each move. Adetutu, moving to the side, kept glancing at the doorway to the bride's room. The mirror was still inside. Mama Ife's words haunted her. Do not let the bride stand before it again. She tried to convince herself it would be easy. After all, the bride was already out here in the courtyard. The rest of the day would be dancing, eating, and blessings. Surely the mirror wouldn't matter now. But then she overheard two of the bride's cousins talking. After the first dance, we'll take her back in for the blessing of beauty ritual. You know Baba Salako insists she must stand before the lucky mirror so her beauty will last all her life. Adetutu's stomach clenched. Well, that cannot happen. She needed a plan. She couldn't just walk up to Baba Salako and say, "Your mirror is cursed." People would laugh, or worse, accuse her of jealousy. She spent the next hour hovering near the bride, offering to adjust her geli or fix her beads whenever they shifted. She told herself she would block any attempt to lead the bride back to the room. But trouble came sooner than she thought. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, the master of ceremonies announced the blessing of beauty. Two women stepped forward to lead the bride inside. Adetutu's heart thudded. She hurried to intercept them. Wait, her geli is slipping. Let me fix it first. The women paused, and she fussed over the headpiece, pulling and tucking far longer than necessary. But when she stepped back, the bride's father himself appeared. "Enen, what is keeping my daughter? The sun is going down. Let her come and stand before the mirror." Adetutu's lips felt dry. "Baba, maybe we can bless her outside. The air is nice here." Baba Salako frowned. "Nonsense. The blessing must be done in front of the mirror. That is our family's way." Before Adetutu could think of another excuse, the two women took the bride by the hands and led her toward the room. The crowd began following, curious and excited. Adetutu's chest tightened. The words from the mirror echoed in her skull. "Before the sun sets, or you will take her place." She pushed through the crowd, determined to stop them somehow. But as she reached the doorway, her breath caught. The mirror was already glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. The air around it shimmered like heat rising from dry ground. And in its surface, the red-eyed reflection wasn't the bride this time. It was her, Adetu, smiling, lips parting as if to speak. The crowd filled the small room, their voices buzzing with excitement, but Adetutu could barely hear them. All she could see was her own reflection in the mirror. Only it wasn't hers. That other Adetutu in the glass had the same face, the same headscarf, but her skin was pale as moonlight, and her eyes glowed red like burning embers. She smiled wider now, showing sharp, unnatural teeth. Adetutu's knees felt weak. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. The bride stood before the mirror, smiling politely as the elder women prepared the blessing. They dipped their fingers in a small clay bowl of scented oil, ready to anoint her forehead. The crowd hummed a blessing song. And then, without warning, the reflection in the mirror moved differently from the real bride. While the Real Aidbimp stood still, her image in the glass reached out a hand toward Adetutu. Her blood ran cold. Nobody else seemed to notice. The oil was lifted high, ready to touch the bride's skin. Before the sun sets, or you will take her place. The voice filled her head again, sharper this time. Adetutu's instincts screamed. She lunged forward, grabbing the bride's arm. Stop! Don't! Gasps filled the room. Baba Salako's face hardened. Adetutu! What nonsense is this? She tried to explain, but the words tangled in her throat. The mirror, it's not safe, it will. But before she could finish, the mirror's glow flared. A cold gust swept through the room, knocking over the oil bowl. The smell of wet earth filled the air. The reflection of the bride faded. And now the mirror showed only Adetutu. She was standing alone in an empty gray place inside the glass, her pale-faced twin grinning back at her from the other side. Her heart pounded. It felt like the thing in the mirror was tugging at her, pulling invisible threads from her chest. Her breath came short. The room around her seemed to dim, as if the sunlight itself was being drained away. Somewhere behind her, Mama Ife's voice rose above the chaos. Don't let it take her. Get her away from the glass. But the crowd was frozen, confused, afraid. Adetutu's hands gripped the bride tighter, but she felt her strength slipping. Her feet inched forward without her meaning to, the pull from the mirror growing stronger. The red-eyed Adetutu in the glass opened her mouth wide as if to swallow her whole. The last thing Adetutu saw before the light around her went completely cold was the sun outside, dipping lower, dangerously close to the horizon. The pull was like invisible chains hooked deep into Adetutu's chest, dragging her step by step toward the glass. Her heels scraped against the floor as she tried to dig them in, but the force was stronger than her muscles. The red-eyed version of herself in the mirror tilted its head, mocking her struggle. Its mouth moved, and though no sound came from the glass, the words echoed clearly inside her mind. Your place is here now. Adetutu's pulse roared in her ears. The edges of the room blurred. She could barely see the crowd anymore, only the glowing surface of the mirror, growing wider, taller, until it was all she could see. Then, through the haze, a voice cut through like a blade. Adetutu! Look at me, not the mirror. It was Mama Ife, forcing her way through the shocked guests. She clutched a small leather pouch in one hand, the kind used to carry protective charms. Mama, help! Adetutu gasped, but her voice felt far away. Mama Ife dropped the pouch into Adetutu's palm. Hold it tight. Do not let it fall. The moment Adetutu's fingers closed around it, a sharp warmth spread through her arm, pushing back the icy pull of the mirror. She staggered, sucking in a full breath for the first time in what felt like minutes. Break it! Mama Ife shouted. Now, while it still watches you. Adetutu stared at the mirror, at the pale-faced creature still grinning at her. Her heart thudded. Could she really do it? This was Baba Salako's lucky family heirloom. If she smashed it, she could be banished from the village, or worse. But the creature's eyes narrowed, as if sensing her hesitation. The pull on her chest returned, harder this time. She thought of her mother, waiting in their leaky-roofed hut. She thought of Funk, her friend at the market. She thought of the children who ran to greet her in the mornings. If she was trapped in that mirror, she would lose them all forever. A surge of determination lit up inside her. Adetutu reached for the heavy wooden comb in her sash, a tool she always carried for braiding. Without breaking eye contact with her reflection, she lifted it high. The crowd gasped as she swung. The comb's sharp edge slammed into the mirror's surface. A crack shot across the glass with a sound like a thunderclap. The red-eyed version of her shrieked, a sound that rattled the walls, even though no mouth moved in the real room. The pull on her chest snapped. She fell backward into Mama Ife's arms. The mirror shook violently on its stand. The carved half-human, half-animal figures around its frame seemed to twist in pain. The cracks spread wider, zigzagging like lightning. Again, Mama Ife urged. Adetutu scrambled to her feet, raised the comb, and struck with all her strength. The glass shattered into dozens of jagged shards that scattered across the floor. A freezing wind burst from the frame, swirling through the room, and for just a moment everyone saw it. A pale, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes being sucked back into the empty frame before vanishing completely. Then silence. The guests stared in shock. Baba Salako's mouth opened and closed like a man who couldn't decide whether to shout or fall to his knees. Adetutu's hands were shaking, but she was free. The sun outside was now a golden rim on the horizon, and for the first time in hours, she could breathe without fear. But she knew it wasn't over yet. Because the broken frame, though empty, still seemed to hum faintly in the air, as if it wasn't entirely dead. The broken mirror frame lay on the floor like the carcass of a dangerous animal. Its jagged edges caught the fading sunlight, glinting faintly. The crowd stayed silent, as though afraid that one wrong word might call the evil back. Baba Salako finally found his voice. "Adetutu, what have you done?" Adetutu steadied herself. "I saved your daughter's life." Her voice was firm, though her heart still pounded. That mirror wasn't lucky. It wanted to take her, or me, away forever. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some people nodded in agreement. Others looked at her as if she had gone mad. Mama Ife stepped forward, her wrinkled face set with certainty. "This girl speaks the truth. That mirror was made by hands that knew the language of spirits. It was a trap, not a blessing. If it had not been destroyed before the sun set, one of these young women would have been lost to it, and a spirit would have walked among us wearing her face." The bride, Aidbimp, clutched her chest. "Spirits, wearing our faces." "Yes," Mama Ife said gravely. "And when they do, they bring misfortune to every house they enter." A shiver ran through the room. Even Baba Salako's expression softened. Slowly he nodded. "Then we owe you more than thanks, Adetutu." But Adetutu wasn't done. She knew the shards of glass still held some of the mirror's power. If they were left here, someone might try to put it back together, or a curious child might touch it. "We must bury the pieces," she said, "far from here where no one will find them." Mama Ife agreed. "And salt the ground so the spirit cannot rise again." That evening, as the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, Adetutu, Mama Ife, and Baba Salako walked beyond the village to a patch of wild land where thorn bushes grew thick. They dug a deep hole, poured in the shards, sprinkled salt, and covered it with heavy stones. When they were done, the night air felt lighter. Even the crickets seemed to sing more cheerfully. By the time they returned to the compound, the wedding feast had resumed. Drums beat, people danced, and children chased each other with sticky fingers from stolen puff-puff. The bride and groom sat together, smiling, unaware of just how close their day had come to disaster. Adetutu sat quietly at the edge of the gathering, watching. She didn't need thanks or reward. It was enough to know the danger was gone. Mama Ife joined her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You showed courage today, child. You faced something that even elders would fear." Adetutu smiled faintly. "I just couldn't let it take her place, or mine." The old woman nodded. "Remember this. Beauty, luck, and honor are never worth more than a person's life. Some traditions are not blessings, no matter how old they are." Adetutu thought of the mirror's mocking grin, of the cold wind and the pull in her chest. She knew she would never look at Lucky Charms the same way again. As the moon rose over Orogun village, harmony returned. But the story of the cursed wedding mirror would be told for generations, not as a tale of fear, but as a reminder. True courage is protecting others, even when no one believes you. And somewhere, far beyond the village, under a mound of thorns and salted earth, the shards of the mirror lay silent for now.